again, like for that vocal, I just wanted it to kind of have that air, like where you picture that dark studio vocal booth in the 80s, you know, like that was really the approach, was like a visual first, and then, you know, trying to get the sound that matches the vibe.
You're listening to the Inside the Mix podcast with your host, Marc Matthews.
Hey folks, welcome to Inside the Mix. Today we're diving into how to transform a classic rock song into a synthwave masterpiece. And who better to guide us than Davey Oberlin, the mastermind behind All the Damn Vampires. Davey, how are you, buddy? Thank you for joining me.
Great, thanks for having me.
Fantastic. So I've been looking forward to this, and I should have said this off air, but I'm on the other side of a sore throat, so my voice might break slightly at times, so my apologies if it does.
You and me both. I've been fighting a cold, so.
Have you? Yeah, same, man, same. Every time I think I'm getting over it, then I try and do some sort of content like this, and my voice just gives out. But hopefully, fingers crossed,
we'll be all right. On the same page, so we got this.
by the end of this, there would just be no audio whatsoever, neither of us able to talk. Fantastic. So, for the audience listening who might not be familiar with Davey and All the Damn Vampires, he's had quite an impressive career, from playing keyboard for Five Finger Death Punch and Korn to, I love that straight away, to crafting cinematic synth-heavy music that's captivated fans worldwide. He's no stranger to reinterpreting iconic sounds, and today he's going to share his process for covering classic rock songs in a synthwave style. Now, before we went live with this, I was just saying that I've always been a listener of your work and whatnot, but then I heard the Whitesnake cover of Is This Love, which, for anyone who knows me, is probably one of my favorite songs, and I was like, man, gotta get this guy on the podcast to chat about this, because it's a belter of a tune to begin with, and a synthwave cover to boot as well. So really excited for this, man. Really excited.
Thank you. This is awesome.
Yeah. So in this episode, you will learn step by step how to approach covering a classic rock song, where to start, sound design, some vocal and instrumentation, and some production and mixing techniques. So I think straight away, to begin with, breaking down the process, you covered Is This Love. What drew you to want to do a sort of synthwave with guitar-esque sort of cover of this song?
It actually started, I covered the song Toy Soldiers by Martika. And what I wanted to do was take, like, you know, that just the vibe and the synths and the melodies, and I wanted to add, you know, things that I like heavier guitar. So in that song, I'm using a guitar that's tuned to like drop A, so it's like super heavy, but it's still palatable. The vocals are still true to the original. I kind of wanted to like take the classic and have it meet modern. I'm a big Typo Negative fan. That's one of my favorite bands. So there's a little bit of Typo Negative in everything I do with All the Damn Vampires, and some people either know or they don't, but that was kind of where it kicked off, and I'm like, I want to keep introducing the heavier guitar to this stuff and like still pay homage to like music from a time that like fits visuals so well, like, you know, some of the Miami Vice stuff. Like I love all that Bloodsport, like how the music accompanies the visuals. So I was like, how do I take that, produce it modern, and then add like these heavier guitars so that when I do it live, it's like even more exciting. And we could, you know, do shows with like Korn or Five Finger, some of the bands that I played with. Like I want to fit within the same world and still honor like my synthwave, you know, roots with all that.
Typo Negative. As soon as you say, I'm a massive Typo fan, and I'm so good. I never got to see them live, and yeah, I would have loved to have, man. And there's a whacking performance of Typo. I'm going off on a tangent here that I watch probably once a week.
I think I do
too. There's one shot with anesthesia as it pans across the crowd at like dusk, and I'm like, this is incredible. So drop A as well. I mean, I was in a band and we played in drop B, and I thought that was, but drop A, that is some. What size strings are you using for drop A?
Man, I don't know. They're like just shy of bass strings. Is This Love is drop F. So, but I'm actually using a pedal that tunes it down, because during the clean guitar parts, I'm playing in standard. And then the guitar itself that I've got right here is tuned to drop A, and then I hit that pedal and bring it down to drop F. So it's like super heavy. I mean, by all standards, it should be like a hardcore song, you know, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't come off like that. It still comes off like "Is This Love?" But you know, it's easy to miss. Like nobody's like sitting there going, "Oh dang!" Like you know.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite songs, and maybe I shouldn't spill the beans too. I'll save it for later on why I got around to what that's going into for the body of work. But
yeah, sure, of course. So is that, are you say you've got the pedal then going to drop F. Is that happening in the chorus? Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. As soon as that that's all like coming into drop F, which is, it's a little bit of a mental mix up because, you know, you got to reposition yourself on the neck for drop F so differently. So if I forgot to hit that pedal or something, it would just sound so off, you know, and then I got to kick that off again for like even the guitar solo. Before I had Andy James on it, I was doing the guitar solo, just playing basically the original solo and the clean parts, you know, it's all like back to standard.
Nice. That's impressive. That is a low tuning. Really low. I can kind of see why though, because when you say that you want it to be able to sort of share the stage with the bands that you've mentioned, you kind of you need that, don't you? You need that sort of sound to complement each other.
You want to feel it in your chest, you know, like I love like the Midnight and Time Cop, but I mean, I can't imagine going to their shows and feeling the sub kicking me in the chest with that heavy guitar. And like, so you get like the sense of like, you know, the great synthwave acts, and then you'll get that like just heavy rock and metal guitar that like just sits so well in the mix, like with that big fat bass guitar. Like, I feel like that's going to be a really cool live show once we get that all, you know, kicked off.
Yeah. You mentioned there the Midnight and Time Cop. Have you ever considered, this is a total tangent here, have you ever considered like covering any of their synthwave body of work, but with that heavier sort of sound that you've got?
That would actually be really cool. I have, and I did a reimagining of River of Darkness by the Midnight, and people seem to love that one. Like I just slowed it down and made it a lot dreamier, a little more like Nine Inch Nails. But
nice.
I haven't really reimagined anything. I talked to Royce, the guitar player for the Midnight, a lot, and he writes some heavy stuff too. Like we'll send each other like demos we're working on, you know, and he's like super into like he sent me something that was like gent heavy guitars. I was like, this is so sick, and so you know, I could see like a future where something like that occurs, but nothing officially yet.
That'd be cool, man. This is a second interview of 2025. So the first one was actually Tyler from the Midnight, which is going to be recording this is dropping the next week, which is the 24th or something of March. And when I first started the podcast, I interviewed a fair amount of artists, and it was quite. I noticed the pattern. There were so many, and I'm one of them, like metalheads who came over to synthwave and like synth music. There just seems to be this. No, I don't want to say calling, but I don't know, some gravitational pull to like the synthwave and synth-based music. What tangent again? What drew you to sort of move into and start dabbling in this realm with all the damn vampires? So
a long time ago, I had this little project that I was dabbling with called Black Zenith, and it was like dark wave, like Depeche Mode, you know, maybe even darker. But my production skills were just not there. I was just making these little songs I'd share with friends and maybe upload here and there. And then I started dating a girl who was really into like FM84, Time Cop, Calyx, what else? Kavinsky. So like once I heard that, I was like, wait, people are like fully just grabbing onto this sound and like really leaning into it. I was like, I've always wanted to do that. I just didn't know there was like a bed position for it. So I started kind of messing with it on my own. I'd be on tour with Korn. I'd have a day off in the hotel and I'd start messing with music, or, you know, and then once I had some tracks done, I'd show the other guys thinking like, they're going to be like, this is goofy, you know, it's like female fronted pop music. Like they're not going to be into it. Everybody loved it. Like even to this day, like if I run into like Jacoby from Papa Roach, he'll tell me, oh, I've been listening to your stuff, you know, like that's my music I have on when I get ready or something, you know. Chris from Under Oath, like all these dudes from like heavier bands, they love synthwave. And it seems to just like translate so well. I have a friend that I grew up with out here, and we used to go to like all these hardcore shows, and our bands would play in them. And he's in a band. It's called like Dance with the Dead, and they do really well. Yeah, Tony. and he comes from the same background. It's like, I don't know, it seems to be like another logical step. Like a lot of people went from hardcore to like dubstep and like DJing. I think there's like a similar like energy behind all that, with that like kind of tempo and the stomp. So synthwave kind of harkens into like metal a little bit, with those like kind of sad minor melodies that are still that can be melodic.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, and it's what I've experienced myself, and what I've chatted to other people about, and like the sounds. Because the great thing with synthesizers is I suppose you're not limited anyway with any genre of music really, but you can create what you want, like sound wise.
Yeah,
and make it as
absolutely.
heavy or as light as you want. But the bands you mentioned, then Papa Roach, man, that's a throwback for me. I remember listening to Papa Roach like the noughties, man. I grew up listening to that sort of new metal sound, and, and then you got Under Oath as well. And I know you did a song. There's a song you released recently, which was I forget the name of it now, but the singer on it, I was like, I recognize that singer's voice. And it took me an age to work it out, but it's like 18 Visions, and it played with me, and it played with me for so long, and I was like, I recognize that voice, I totally do. And then I had
that's awesome.
dig a bit deeper, and then I was like, wow, and it just took me back, because hands in the air, I hadn't listened to 18 Visions for quite a while, but it made me dig back in and go back to that again. So it's really cool though. Like I say, it's interesting that you mentioned all those acts as well, and they're listening to synthwave. It'd be interesting to dig into them as well, man.
A great shout out to 18 Visions. I mean, that was like one of my favorite hardcore bands. And then Keith, the guitar player for 18V, he actually put me on to programming drums, which is how I got started, like breaking away from, doing rehearsals where drummers are flaking and we can't write songs because we don't have a drummer there. And then I just started doing everything in the box, programming my drums, sending them to people, other drummers, so Keith really like helped me out there. James is a good friend, and I was like, it would be so cool to do a song together. And he came out with Runaway Dreams. He sounds kind of like a mix between Sebastian Bach and Ozzy Osbourne on that track. It's like, it's really, I was like, I want to end the album with like a little bit of a hint towards some of the future stuff I'm doing.
Yeah.
So then, fast forward to today, we had, the Whitesnake cover.
Yeah. That's quite a combination, Ozzy and Sebastian Bach. That is, that is quite a combination. But as I said off air, I do go off on tangents. As soon as you say something, it kind of takes me down these other like lines of inquiry, if you will. So, like steering it back to the cover element of it. So we've touched on is this love, but what's your starting point for a cover? Do you focus on like sound design, arrangement, vibe? How do you start a cover song?
So my process, I will take the original and I'll put it in my session. And I find the best way for me to work is to get the drums knocked out. So I'll recreate the drums. I'll follow along with the track. I'll put my own sounds in, of course, but like, I just want to have that backbone so that I can mute that track and then start working on my own. What really like kind of propelled me towards like focusing on some covers is I was asked to do like remixes. Like Sumerian Records hit me up for a bunch of remixes, but what I ended up doing was barely listening to the original. I just took the vocal stem and make my own song around it, And so I realized like I'm not doing remixes, I'm doing like full reimaginings. And then that ended up becoming like the Avenged Sevenfold collaboration I did, where they were just like, let's make a synthwave song, and so we did that track. And then I started kind of hitting these covers a little bit harder, and I found the process of starting with the drums really gets you there. And then behind that, you can recreate the melody any way you want. So I could have done it with a synth, I could have done it with a guitar, but for this particular cover, the bass and the drums really like drive the whole song, and the bass that it really drives it. So I got this nice LTD bass, and I slapped on some Parallax from Neural DSP. That's a great plug-in. It just makes it fat. I have a Kemper powered guitar head that I use with like a really clean channel. Put the bass in through that, slap Parallax on it, and then it just gives you this massive bass sound. I barely had to adjust it in the mix. Like I was pretty happy with it right away. I'm also like really into low end and bass, probably more than a lot of people. Like I had Andy James and Charlie from Five Finger in my truck. And they were here in town, and I was driving them, and I was showing them all these new tracks, and they were just getting blown away by all the bass in the back. It was so brutal. I was like, I'm sorry, guys, like I can't help it. I don't even realize it till I get in, and do a car mix, like that the bass is so cranked. But I just love it that way. I always have.
Yeah. What is it you think that drives you to have that, not excessive bass, but that focus on the low end? Is it because of the detuned guitars, or is it just like it's just something inbuilt in you that just wants that really powerful low frequency sort of, that low end?
I think that's like, there's multiple answers to that. Like a big part of it is growing up. I was a big West Coast hip hop fan. So like I grew up in LA. I was listening to, like Doggy Style and like all the Dre stuff. I love like, and then when I heard Korn and they had 808s, I was like, okay, that's sick. And so I've always kind of gravitated towards bands that have a little bit more low end in their guitar mix and their drum mix, And then the other side of that is like, I think all the years of live music, I've lost some low frequency. So in my hearing, so I think I'm cranking it more to like compensate. And so it's like this like unholy marriage of like to wanting too much low end. So I kind of have to dial it back, but yeah, I do lean heavier into the low end than most people.
You've kind of gone against what is the natural tendency as we get older, is the high frequencies tail off. You've got to like, it's gone the other way. They're like the lows have tailed off. But I didn't realize that Korn used 808s. I didn't know that. What is that?
In the beginning of I think it's Blind, boom 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 boom, boom. So like Ray, the drummer now, he had a little sample pad with an 808 on it that was that kind of iconic, that doo, and you'll hear it in like the older recordings now that I've mentioned it. Like if you listen, like you're like, oh, there it is. Like it's just this one 808 sound, and
right,
so he's got that set up. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, nice. Is there anything in particular that when it comes to cover songs, let's say we're sticking with the rock genre here, that is more challenging than what is the most challenging part of it, do you think? Let's say.
Well, for me, I do everything by ear. I can't read music, like, so if I'm recreating something and there's like a small little nuance and I miss it, I like to send my music to a handful of friends that I trust for like their mix input, or, and then they'll be like, oh, something's off right here, and then I can't hear it. They'll point it out enough, and then all of a sudden it'll clear up in my head and I'll hear it. So like some of those like smaller nuances are a little bit more difficult. A while ago I would have told you it would be like comping the vocals or mixing the vocals, but now I feel like I have a pretty good handle on that. But just being like overcritical of the mix and like just sitting there and just trying to rerun it until I can't even hear the difference anymore, and like I have to step away for like a week. The biggest part is just going, I'm doing this by ear. I have to trust that. I don't have anything in front of me on paper that's saying this is right or this is wrong. So that's kind of been the biggest struggle. And some of these songs like that Whitesnake are doing are like very technical. Those guys were like masterclass musicians. So there's all kinds of little nuances that you might miss if you aren't paying attention, that you don't think are important, but they actually are. Yeah,
I suppose devil's advocate in a way. And I remember when reading sort of interviews with other musicians throughout the decades and whatnot, when they say they haven't got that ability to read music or necessarily the musical theory. In a way, it kind of, not that you have limitations anyway, but it means you can be a bit more creative. I'm not more creative, or opens up creative possibilities by accident, let's say, I guess.
Yeah, happy accidents, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one I was looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. So basically, Is This Love is like part of a bigger thing I'm doing. It's called, we're coining it Vice Core, and it's going to be like like LA Vice, Miami Vice, and there's some like yacht rock covers on there, like in Spain, and so it's going to be cool. But one of the tracks like that's going to come out is kind of like that. Like I started listening to it, I was like, man, I don't know like if I even want to recreate this, and then I ended up bringing it into this like lo-fi kind of synthy thing for the verses, and then the chorus comes in all big. So that was like one of those happy accidents where it just kind of settled into it without having that the sheet music or whatever, like just by ear, it just felt right, so I'm looking forward to putting that one out too. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, man. Yacht rock sounds interesting. It reminds me of there's an account of a guy, I can't remember his name, so a friend of mine sent it to me, but he does yacht rock covers of various musical genres, and the first one I saw was Pantera, 5 Minutes Alone, like a yacht rock cover, and I was just like, I was blown away. I was like, this is absolutely incredible, just hearing a yacht rock version of that. You'll have to find it. It is so good. Yeah, and it's just the vocal on it is just it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It might be AI generated, but even
Oh,
so,
okay. That's possible.
yeah. It just I was just like this is actually I would listen to this. I
Yeah.
genuinely would listen to that. It just sounded so good.
Yeah. I mean, like, I wish I could list off all the, like, it's a cross between like covers and originals. I wish I could list off more of the covers because it would illustrate it better. But basically, like, if you were to picture like that White Snake cover, this like modern universe of like LA Vice with like the linen suits, and the pastels and stuff, like in the Mac machine guns, like it's kind of like we're leaning into. There's even a track on there with Sunglasses Kid, and
Oh, nice, Ed. Yeah.
I love Edward. I'm the I don't know if anybody knows this, but he just put out an album, and there's like an intro with a guy talking like a radio host, Johnny Thunder. And then there's like a helicopter dude who's like illustrating all the action that's going on. That's all me. Like I did all the voiceovers on that.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of like cool collaborations together. He's like one of my top 5 friends that are like production wizards that I bounce things off of. So like everything I finish, I send to him on like WhatsApp. I'm like, hey, let me know if this mix sounds good.
Yeah.
He's one of the best. He's always been so.
Yeah. Ed's great, man. I've had him on the podcast a couple of times. I think I'm overdue, actually. I think we said we're going to catch up in a year's time, so I should probably reach out to him. But yeah, he's great, isn't he? He's a great bloke, and like what he's doing on social media as well with his captions and his POV stuff. It is so good.
It's crazy. Like there's so many copycats that have spawned from that, And...
Indeed. I see a new one crop up every day. But no, that's cool. It's really interesting because obviously speaking to yourself today, and then you mentioned Ed Sunglasses Kid, and just how this sort of circle, this network has sort of grown from all these people from different sort of walks of musical life, if you will. It's really, really, really interesting.
Yeah,
really
it is. I think it's a cool place to be and a really cool time. I mean, I feel like with the resources we have now with digital streaming and that whole like the financial structure behind that, it's kind of holding back this like incredible moment in time where we could all be in the same space and putting on these giant festivals, and there's just so many cool opportunities. But there's little bits like if people follow really close, where we're like helping each other out and we're doing cool little things like those voiceovers, and obviously I'll have a track or two coming out with Ed like for this Vice Core stuff, so that'll be really cool to show people.
I look forward to listening to that. Excellent, man. But once again, I go off on a tangent, steering back to the to the cover side of things. So there was one thing I wanted to touch on, and that was it's actually a couple of things actually before we sort of wrap things up, and that was the vocal on Is This Love. Now, obviously, David Coverdale's voice is an impressive voice, as we well know. How did you approach handling the vocals and sort of the vocal production on that?
Well, so Ryan Rose is the singer, and he's singing on pretty much all the new stuff. I have a track that is a popular older track called Breaking Up that Ryan sings on, so a lot of people that are following my music will know him from that. And he's just an incredible vocalist, like through and through. Like he's almost like too powerful to where like if he's tracking, we really have to be careful with the vocal stems because there's so much in there. So I really just wanted it to be very clear and present, but also, I needed that reverb and that delay to kind of tail in there a little bit, and especially if you want to get that kind of iconic sound. So what I did was I actually sidechained all of the effects. So I have the main vocal, and then I'm sending it to another bus with like, delay, reverb just cranked up, and then I turn that down very low. So then you don't lose any of the volume on the vocal, and you're not getting too muddy and crowded, but you still have that, those effects. And I think I used a lot of like Valhalla vintage verb because they have some of the gated stuff, and that has been working really well with this. And then sometimes I'll use like FabFilter Pro R. I like the FabFilter plugin suites and the visuals of them. And then I work in Cubase, so I just slapped on a Cubase stock like ping pong delay and just I put that at like 15% mix, just keep it like nice and low. So I really tried to just keep the vocals out front and I definitely did a little bit less effects processing on them than I normally would. Sometimes I'll really saturate them, but I felt like with Ryan, like his voice is just so powerful and distinct. Like he doesn't need much, like a lot of vocals I'll comp and I'll have to like tune them up, melodyne, like all that, just to clean things up. But really, once I get stems from Ryan, it's always just a matter of like taming those really powerful moments, because they're just so brutal. But again, like for that vocal, I just wanted it to kind of have that air, like where you picture that dark studio vocal booth in the 80s, like that was really the approach, was like a visual first, and then, trying to get the sound that matches the vibe.
Nice. Valhalla reverb, vintage fair. There's my voice going there. It's a fantastic reverb, man. I've been using that for years as well, and it's great to hear as well that. I think this would be really good for the audience listening, that you're also using stock like delays and stock plugins, because they're often overlooked. I find. I mean, you're a Cubase user, but regardless of what sort of DAW, so DAW sort of agnostic, like using just stock plugins, it's great to hear that as well, because sometimes they're overlooked, as I say.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in there. Like Cubase does a really good job. I started on Pro Tools, then I would rewire with Reason to do synth stuff, and now I'm all in on Cubase. I have a good friend. He goes by DJ Zed, and he uses Cubase, and I loved his production, so I was like, man, just teach me. And so it was a really easy transition, just very similar to Pro Tools, and it's just a lot better for MIDI and everything. So I go in there, and then what I can't get out of the stock stuff, I'll do like external plugins. Oh, another plugin I like with vocals that people might dig is it's called Xvox, Xvox.
Yeah.
And it's a great starting point. Like if you just need, a little bit more in your vocal, you need a little push, you need some effects, like it kind of has everything. You can almost just put it on their default. Like I like to carve out the low end frequencies and like really just get all the frequencies clean. But Xvox is awesome. Like I sometimes will just slap that on right away and just go from there.
Is that a native plugin for Cubase, or is that a third party plugin?
That's a third party. I wish I could tell you what company makes it, but
that's good. I'll put a link in the episode notes. I'll do a bit of research afterwards and chuck it in there for the audience as well. But that's really cool, man. So moving on, in the interest of time here, to the actual guitar. So you got Andy James, phenomenal guitarist. I followed his work for quite some time.
Yeah.
So we've touched on earlier that you're using quite low tunings, to say the least. So when it comes to sort of the lead guitar elements of it, have you got any tips for making... Actually, let's start first with how you approached and why you approached Andy James. Let's start with that story first.
Okay, so Andy is on one of my favorite All the Damn Vampires songs I've ever written, called Carolina Lies. So he plays the solo on that song. We were actually out on tour together, and I hadn't been tracking guitar or anything on Cubase. Like I just wasn't confident. And then I saw him working with it. He'd bring his Kemper in and he'd be tracking on Cubase. And I'm like, dude, like, what's your process? And so he helped me, get myself set up to basically track instruments again in a way I hadn't been doing for years. I came home, I wrote like 9 super heavy songs, like very like typo negative, catatonia, like just like moody stuff. I'll send you I have a private link for that. I'll send you. But
please do, man.
It was like the first thing I did when I got home, so I was like, all right, like this is killer. And Andy also loves Synthwave, so if we'd be in the dressing room getting ready, we were doing all this Metallica shows, so we'd be at the stadiums and we'd have like the midnight playing, as our warm-up music while we're getting ready, just doing push-ups, whatever. Like Charlie and Andy love Synthwave. We all listen to a little bit of everything, Sleep Token, whatever. Like so that's always kind of there. And I think once Andy did Carolina Lies, the track did really well. It got received really well. Toy Soldiers, Andy plays a solo on that one. So I was like, this is another great song for Andy. Like I originally recorded myself playing the solo on it, and I was like, this is cool, but it's basically just the original solo. I want to hear Andy James' take on this, because to be honest, he's one of my favorite guitar players. I think he's maybe one of the best guitar players right now. Like modern technicality, feel, he does everything so well. It's like the best of Dimebag and the best of like Yngwie Malmsteen all in one person, So
yeah.
I hope he doesn't listen to this, because this will inflame inflate his ego. But but anyway, so I was like, let me throw this to Andy if he's got time, if he's interested, and he got right back to me, with his take on the solo. It was awesome. And it was one of those moments where he pointed out one of those things that I was missing. So like there's that dun 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 dun. I wasn't stepping up like soon enough. So there's a step up that goes a little bit like one sooner than I was doing. Andy was like, something's wrong, mate. He's like, there's just something that's off on this part. And I was like, I can't hear it, man. It's driving me crazy. He's like, listen. And then he did it. I was like, So, he helped me sort that, got the solo on it. It was cool. I'm always a little nervous because like all the other guitars are me. So I'm like, oh man, if Andy doesn't like these guitars, I got to listen to what he says because he's like the ultimate. So but it all worked out, and I'm always hoping I can get Andy on something. In a perfect world, he'd be in the All the Damn Vampires live band when I start doing that. But that just depends on his schedule and like what he's interested in.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I'm gonna have to reach out to Andy once again. This is an eye opener for me because you mentioned these artists that I had no idea. Obviously, I know Andy's recorded on, and you've worked with Andy on your stuff. But a lot of them, I had no idea they were sort of like these synth fans. So it'd be interesting. I'll aim high and start approaching them randomly and see if I can get
would
on
be
them.
Great. He's also a Cubase user, like I said, and so he's a great producer. He does all of his own solo stuff. He produces all of that. And the production's awesome. I think we use the same drum kits.
Amazing. So with regards to that and recording guitar for Synthwave, because I know it happens a lot because the sort of core listeners for this podcast started out. It really did start out with like Synthwave artists, and it's sort of grown organically and ballooned from that into various sort of sectors and whatnot. But then it's sort of steering its way back to synth now. Mm-hmm. And I know there are a lot out there who do use guitar in particular. What's your sort of top tip for incorporating guitar, let's say both rhythm and lead, into Synthwave or synth music?
That's a tough one. Like, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can incorporate it. Obviously, leads are easy. Like, you can play cool little leads over most synthwave music. It fits it really well. But when you're doing the heavier guitars or like anything distorted or rhythmic, if you're not doing that kind of clean Fender, like kind of bouncy picking, which you can hear in like Bad Dreamers stuff, and the 1975, like that stuff's all great. But like if stuff like what I'm doing with the heavier stuff, I feel like the drums really have to match it. So like whether that's a pure electronic sub kick, like like that would work really well with some heavier guitar. Something like I use, which is like a really punchy, kick and snare, work really well. So I think that's a big part of it is that percussive element. Like it really needs to match. If not, like you need to mix it low or just like have it sit nicely in the mix. I like to quad track my rhythms, so I do like two left, two right. My leads are usually stereo right down the center. Bass guitar, I'll do like a mono down the center, and I have a stereo delay in Cubase that I've modified to kind of put on that, and it widens it out. But yeah, there's a lot of different tricks. I think guitar is a little bit touchier just because you can't just slap distorted guitar over anything. If you're doing those kind of Lindrum sounds, like some of those classic, like smaller synth drums, that distorted guitar is going to sound really messy. Like you kind of got to tuck that far back in the mix at that point. So I would just be mindful of the entire composition if you're going to lean into guitars on your stuff. Like, absolutely.
Yeah. What you mentioned there about the percussive element of it, sort of my final question is, and I was listening to a podcast and they mentioned, I think it was Warren Hurt was on one podcast and he was talking about it, which was with regards to sort of quantizing into the grid. With regards to production, how do you find your sort of approach to quantization? Let's say with like bass and guitar, and then because you mentioned there about drums and tying that all in together, is it quite sort of to the grid, or is there a bit of flex there? Is it a bit looser in terms of timing? Or I guess, does it depend on the song?
It depends on the song, but I'll be honest with you, I never touch quantize. Like I just try to play in time. Like my drums are usually locked in the grid, and then my guitar and bass, I'm just like, I mean, I've been doing it for so long that I lock in pretty quick. I've played with a lot of really great drummers. Before I was with Korn, I played guitar for a band whose drummer was Gil Sharon, and he's like a masterclass drummer. I think he's playing for Manson right now, but he was in like Dillinger Escape Plan, and
Yeah.
he puts out a lot of drum clinics and stuff. And I learned a lot playing with him because I had to lock in, and I thought I was great. And then I went to rehearsal and I left, and they were just like, "Dude, it's not good enough." I was like, "What?" So I'm like really locking in with those kicks, and so now when I track, I'm like pretty much in the pocket. But if I want that little bit of swing, like I just, again, I don't touch quantize unless it's like synth stuff that I'm drawing in, with VSTs or like MIDI.
Yeah.
I stay away from that. I like to just, like that, just a slight bit of push or a slight bit of lag, like can add a lot of feel to things, the bass line is a great example. Like it's really, there's a little bit of push and pull on it.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Davey, it's been an absolute pleasure. This has flown by, and as I said, I generally don't get through all the questions. There's a lot more here, but it's been a pleasure talking to you today, and it's been quite eye-opening as well. Some of the stuff you've dropped that I wasn't aware of, just the interest in synthwave and your production techniques and whatnot. And I know the audience is going to get a lot from this with regards to covering not just rock songs, but cover songs in general. So a huge thank you. But before we wrap things up, is there anything you'd like to share with the audience? And also, where is the best place for them to find you online if they want to know more and listen to more?
If you need like kind of a central hub to just find all my stuff, I would just go to my Instagram, which is just Davey Oberlin, Davey Oberlin. And I have a new track I just finished with Mint Simon that's going to be set to release soon, called Leaving Los Angeles. And
nice.
It's very, very Twin Peaks kind of romantic ballad. And then I've got a lot of Vice Core lined up, so there'll be an announcement on that, and then we'll have an entire album coming out. So yeah, I got a lot of new music coming out, All the Damn Vampires in particular, and a couple other projects. So just follow me on Instagram, and all my links are through there. I share everything I do in real time on that.
Fantastic, man. Vice Core. That I'm not going to lie, that was a new one on me today, but I'm that term in particular. So I'm excited to listen to more. Davey, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I will leave you to enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll catch up with you soon.